Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to unpack exactly why Flask remains such a top-tier choice for Python developers. We're living in a sea of heavy, batteries-included frameworks, right? But if you've ever wanted to ship a Python web app quickly, you've definitely crossed paths with Flask. So let's dive right in and explore the unique flexibility and simplicity that keeps it so highly relevant. You really have to ask yourself, why choose Flask over spending days fighting default configurations you don't even need? It's a great question. Despite literal waves of new frameworks dropping every single year with ever more feature-rich options, developers still reach for Flask. And the answer? Well, it lies in how it handles default behavior. It stays minimal, it stays understandable, and it lets you grow your architecture entirely on your own terms. Here is our roadmap for today. 1. The power of minimalism. 2. Unlocking true flexibility. 3. A quietly powerful ecosystem. 4. Growing without early complexity. And 5. When to choose Flask. Section 1. The power of minimalism. Less magic, more motion. So Flask is famously known as a micro framework. Now, the crucial point here is that micro absolutely doesn't mean limited or incapable. Not at all. It just means Flask gives you an incredibly small surface area to learn and significantly less framework code to mentally model. Its core promise is super straightforward. It provides routing, request and response handling, and a clean extension story. And then it simply gets out of your way. This means you can understand the whole app really quickly. Honestly, some projects can legitimately fit into a single file and still be totally ready for production, which is just a genuinely cool feature. And, this minimalism directly translates to highly practical benefits. Because there's way less magic happening behind the scenes, the control flow is entirely obvious. You see your routes, you see your handlers, and you decide exactly how to structure your modules. It's like a clear glass box. This makes debugging and onboarding new developers so much easier. Seriously, if you know Python, you're going to be productive in Flask almost instantly, spending your time actually building your product rather than fighting those annoying framework defaults. Moving on to Section 2, Unlocking True Flexibility. You choose the pieces. This right here represents the core contrast in web development philosophies. On one side, we've got those heavier, batteries-included frameworks that pack literally every feature under the sun. Honestly, sometimes I can feel like carrying a 50-pound toolbox just to tighten a single screw. On the other side, we have Flask's bring-your-own-components modularity. Flask gives you a rock-solid core and lets you assemble the rest. You want a specific database layer, validation, background jobs, or admin tooling. You pick it. This approach avoids vendor lock-in and allows your application to remain remarkably adaptable. Now, in the real world, Flask excels in some very specific areas. For prototypes and MVPs, it offers incredibly low setup cost and minimal boilerplate. It's a total lifesaver. For small to medium web apps, it keeps complexity totally proportional to the task at hand. When we're talking about building internal tools, it is incredibly fast for CRUD dashboards, where you just need to create, read, update, and delete data. And for microservices and lightweight APIs, it acts as a wonderfully thin request layer with super easy JSON handling. It adapts to you whether you're using traditional WSGI setups, that standard interface between web servers and Python apps, containerized services, or serverless deployments. Because the framework isn't tightly coupled to a single stack, your requirements can just change seamlessly over time. You are completely agnostic to the ORM, the tool connecting your code to your database. You want to use SQL Alchemy? Great. Write raw SQL? Go for it. Wrap an external service? Easy. Your project structure just evolves naturally. You start with a single module and maybe split into packages only when your endpoints multiply. Long term, this means you experience far less friction if you ever need to swap out a database or, say, bring in a completely new authentication provider down the line. All right, Section 3, a quietly powerful ecosystem, making micro feel full-featured. You see, Flask's ecosystem is one of its quiet superpowers. Because it's been used across production systems for years, a massive number of common needs already have well-worn production-tested solutions ready to go. You literally don't have to reinvent the wheel. You can easily drop in authentication like OAuth. You can bring in database integrations via SQ Alchemy, or robust form handling, API serialization, and straightforward testing utilities. The beauty is, you keep the core incredibly simple while effortlessly pulling in these proven libraries only as your application's specific demands actually increase. As the Python community often points out, Flask is frequently the thin edge that sits in front of your real system. It's absolutely excellent at turning HTTP requests into well-structured function calls and then turning those results right back into responses. This perfectly highlights exactly why so many development teams utilize Flask for API-first development. Defining endpoints is just direct. You completely control request parsing and response formatting without having to fight rigid defaults. It really is the perfect thin edge for containers and short-lived services where having a smaller operational footprint and fewer dependencies really matters. Moving to Section 4, growing without early complexity, scaling without the tax. Now, this brings us to perhaps the most common misconception about the framework, so let's just address it head on. Is Flask really only for tiny apps? The definitive answer is no, absolutely not. Flask easily handles substantial, large-scale applications, provided you're deliberate about your structure and maintain clear responsibilities. It never forces patterns on you automatically, which is exactly why seasoned engineering teams like it so much. You get to choose exactly when to introduce architectural layers. As you scale up, you can adopt blueprints, which is basically Flask's way of doing modular routing, to keep your feature areas beautifully isolated and testable. You can implement per-environment configuration for your dev, staging, and production setups, add middleware for cross-cutting concerns like logging and request IDs, and even seamlessly pair Flask with background task queues. The golden rule here? You add these practices only when the scale of your application actually demands it. And finally, Section 5. When to choose Flask, making the right architectural call. So, what does this all mean for your next project? Well, you should choose Flask when your requirements are clear and lightweight, you're building APIs, and you highly value explicitness and modularity. It's a real game changer for small, uncertain, and iteration-heavy starts. On the flip side, though, you should probably consider a heavier framework if your team requires a highly opinionated structure right out of the gate, or if you strictly need built-in administrative patterns immediately. It's all about using the right tool for the job. If you do decide Flask is the right tool for you, these 3 steps give you a sensible, actionable way to start without over-engineering the whole shebang. First, just start small by defining a few routes. Second, add your dev and prod environment configurations alongside some basic testing. And third, and this is key, introduce major dependencies like your database library or user authentication only when the app actually requires them to function. Seriously, if you remember just one thing from our time together today, make it this. Add complexity only when the project earns it. That is the absolute crucial takeaway from this explainer. Flask is enduringly popular because it lets you begin with total clarity and scale your architecture intelligently, piece by piece, as your success dictates. So, with all of this incredible flexibility and unopinionated power right at your fingertips, what tiny feature will you build in Flask next? I highly encourage you to grab a single file, write a few routes, and feel the speed of this micro framework for yourself. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and happy coding.